you don't really know what's going to happen.
We want to make sure that everyone can be chasing that American dream.
Sometimes the only way to succeed is just to not give up. Now they know
The other side.
All right, episode 2. We've made it. We've changed our shirts.
It's the same one.
It's a new day.
It's all good.
Is it the same shirt?
It's a different shirt, but it's a black shirt still.
Yeah. Well, mine just grew sleeves. It's the same thing, too.
Same thing.
It's all good. Yeah, episode 2, last time we talked a little bit about how we met, how our business started, and kind of the point of the podcast, which is to show the other side of entrepreneurship, where not everything is Instagram, right? Not everything is what we present to people. A lot of life and entrepreneurship is never seen. And it's one of those things that make entrepreneurs feel very alone. They feel very lonely. They feel like they're very isolated. They have a very, like they have their own experience, when the reality is most of us are experiencing the same sort of thing.
Correct. It's like the person who doesn't ask the question in class because they're afraid that everyone else is not going to think that way, even though probably 80% of them are all thinking the same
exactly. Like if you have the question, probably somebody else has the question too.
Yeah.
So just speak up. And I think that's true with entrepreneurs that we know, real estate agents that we know. There's a lot of very shared experiences, but I think people think that they're the only one going through what they're going through.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So this podcast is really to highlight the stuff that goes on behind the scenes. Like, how did we actually get to where we're going? You know? And so the podcast is called The Other Side. And one of the things that really stuck out to me when I was a kid, we were talking about this the other day on like OPB, there was this guy named Paul Harvey. And Paul Harvey used to do all these like stories, and then like he would lead you on this journey of like this random story. And then the very end of it, he'd pull the whole story together. Like I sent you the thing on YouTube this morning about how Garfield was created, about some kid who loved cats and married a woman who can't be around cats. And so he started drawing cats like a psychopath. And ended up creating Garfield, one of the greatest cartoons of all time.
Yeah, that's very true.
And then he always ends the story with, now you know the rest of the story.
Exactly.
Pause for dramatic effects. Yeah. Ooh,
Just
yeah.
in sync.
In sync, yeah. So now you know the rest of the story. So I think that's something that's always been interesting to me. Like, and I know that's kind of a dumb like old thing to bring back up, but for me, whatever reason, I always really liked those stories. It was interesting to me. I liked the twist at the end of it. Yeah. I've always been drawn to the background of something.
Okay.
I've never been super interested in the presentation of stuff. I've always been more interested on like what goes into it.
Yeah.
So whether that's a production, a play, a movie, or whatever, like I like to be behind the scenes. Like I like to see how things are made. Like that's what gets me interested. I don't really, to be quite frank, I don't really care always about the final product. I'm more interested in like how things came to be.
And that's the opposite of me, because I love seeing the final product, and I'm like, I don't care how you did it, as long as you got it done, it looks fucking cool. So
yeah, exactly. You're like, okay, yeah, that looks good to me.
I think we just spent the last 20 minutes of you trying to find the right sound quality for us right now, and I was like, it sounds the exact same for the last 20 minutes for me. But the fact that you notice those little details is amazing, because that's what, again, if both of us were the exact same person, then it would not be working as well as we have made it so far.
No, we both can't be as strong as you. It would just be awkward inside
we both can't be as smart as you, even though I'm smart, just not my own ways. I was trying to not downplay myself also at the same time, like shit.
You're like trying to give you a compliment, but insult yourself at the same time.
Yeah, whatever. You got lucky on that one.
Well, the theme for today, from my perspective, is you should just give up. It's really the best way to handle entrepreneurship is you should just give up. And if you get past this feeling of you should just give up, and you get through that feeling, good things tend to happen. Yep. But if you're at that stage and you really think you should give up, you should just give up.
Yep.
Because if you're already there and you're like, man, I don't know if I can do this, you should just be done already. Because if you can't get the mental fortitude to get past that one feeling,
correct,
you probably should give up.
Yes. Make room for the people who really want it.
Yeah, exactly. I think a lot of people struggle with entrepreneurship mostly because they're not entrepreneurs.
Yeah, the idea of it's really nice, especially in today's age. It's like everyone thinks, again, like going back to yesterday's episode, it's everyone who thinks or says they're a business owner, they think they're this like certain lifestyle and like they have it easy, but it's not for everyone, which is why the stats are proven over and over again that only like 1% of people really can make it through the entirety of business ownership and hit that 1% of it.
Do you have a source for that stat?
I do, yeah. It's in my head.
It's in myhead.com.
Yeah, it's one of those places in a folder I found a long time ago. And I believe it's because I've seen the marketing so well with the 1%ers.
Yeah.
So, yes.
Yeah, it makes sense. And, so I think that we are here to encourage the people who want to get through this stage of entrepreneurship where they just want to give up and show them kind of what we did and kind of how we got to where we got to, because we didn't just start a business and it just worked overnight.
Yep.
We actually had a lot of really shitty days.
We did.
And there's probably still more to come, to be honest. That's just how things go. That's how growing a business works.
Yeah.
I think now we just handle them very differently because we've had so many.
Agreed.
So many.
So if you're listening to this, again, just know that you're not alone. Even if you feel alone, again, the point of this is to make sure you know that we've gone through some shit too, just like many other people. We're the kids in the class raising their hand right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about that a bit. So we've talked about just kind of how we met, like we discussed, how our business came to be, but our business is now radically different than it was in October of 2019, where it was just this idea. And really the original idea of the business was really to market to sell more life insurance to business owners.
Yep.
And I think a lot of people missed that. Like, it was a consulting thing, but our main transaction point besides the consulting was to do the insurance side of the planning.
Yep.
And so over time and through COVID, that kind of got kicked out of us, and that didn't work very well because we talked about last time, nobody was buying insurance, and the time that everybody should have been buying it and people weren't buying it, which is the weirdest thing ever.
Yeah.
And our business had to change, but it didn't change just because we weren't making money or because we weren't happy with what we were trying to accomplish. It changed because we listened to people talk about what they needed and what they wanted, and we found solutions for them.
Exactly.
So walk us through, like, what do you remember about us starting to talk about starting the bookkeeping part of the business? Because to your point, you've said this many times, like, two dudes who aren't accountants own an accounting firm.
Yeah.
So that's weird.
Yeah.
So walk me through, like, how you first felt, like what you first remember about talking about bookkeeping and kind of like the mental gymnastics you went through before we actually launched that part of our business.
Yeah. So again, like you said, the base of the company at its core was to be consultants and help our business owners, clients, figure out their number one problem, which was always taxes.
Right.
And in the end game, we were like, okay, well, if we could find these creative ways to free up some money, or look at your, tax returns or your bookkeeping and see if we can, like, just help you free up some money, wouldn't it make sense then, in essence, to use that money for you and your family? And we would put it towards life insurance or retirement plans or something like that. So in essence, it's free, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what our company was actually started on, was consulting. To your point, the problem was during COVID, we had we weren't CPAs. We aren't CPAs.
Yeah, we
still aren't, but we weren't CPAs. We weren't bookkeepers. We weren't financial advisors. But we didn't know how to really tell people what we did. We're like, we're financial consultants, but they would have just assumed one of those three that I just mentioned.
Totally.
So we were trying to find a way to differentiate ourselves from, what people just assumed financial.
What was the phrase that we used?
Financial strategist.
Financial strategist. That's right. And people were like, "What the fuck is that?" We're like, "Well, we don't really know. We're just trying to come up with something different."
Exactly. And then when we brought up, like, our jobs, see if we can free up money in, tax strategies and stuff, like, I already got a CPA, or I already got a bookkeeper.
Yeah, exactly.
I already got a financial advisor. So it was so hard to try and build this new market inside of what people just assumed, the three pillars were if you were in the financial game. So once we realized, that was our clients' biggest problems, we started going through COVID, and we're like, okay, how do we make ourselves different? And then our number one mantra was cash flow is king.
Right.
Everyone used to always say cash is king, but in the end, for a business owner, it's cash flow is king.
Right.
And we had the example, like, would you rather have a company that has $1 million in the bank, but $100,000 a year coming in through cash flow, or the person has $100,000 in cash or in the bank, but $1 million in cash flow?
Yeah.
Right. You'd always choose the cash flows coming in. So we decided to practice what we preach, and we looked at our business model towards the end of the year when, through COVID, and we were like, we got to figure this shit out or we're done.
Like right now.
Yeah.
Like, money's gone.
Yeah. Because we were basically just chasing sales constantly, right? I mean, that's what we would do consulting. We get a client, they'd pay, we do the work, but then there'd be no more cash flow. We'd have this reserve in our bank that would slowly be depleted until we brought somebody new in.
I feel like it got quickly depleted. I feel like it didn't go very far.
No, yeah.
But there wasn't a whole lot coming in, to be quite frank.
Yeah,
it wasn't like a whole lot. We couldn't even afford the room that we're in right now based on what we made the first year.
That's correct. Yeah. So we were going to count our blessings on that.
Yeah. Thank the good Lord.
So I think it was just that we knew we needed to add the cash flow to the business because we're constantly just chasing sales. So it was in September, I believe, is when we really realized, like, listen, we got about a couple months to figure this out, or we're gonzo. Like, we don't have any more money. We have no more credit limits. We have nothing.
Dude, we both had cashed out our retirement accounts.
Yep.
Had used our credit cards.
Everything we could.
Everything we had.
It was. We'll get to that in a later episode. More of those struggles. But in the end, to keep this online, we just realized, okay, we need to bring cash flow in. What is it? So we looked at the business model, and we realized we were sending out a ton of business to bookkeepers and CPAs to implement the strategies that we were coming up with. And again, we're not bookkeepers in the sense of like we're bookkeepers at that time doing the books or the CPAs, but we knew how to read the tax returns and we knew what proper bookkeeping should look like. And if we're having to teach these people how to do their job, right?
Yeah, exactly.
We're like, and that's one place we're constantly talking to our clients about, why don't we bring that in-house?
Right.
So that's where I believe you can talk more on it because of the fact that that was really your idea.
Right.
But you're like, why don't we just bring this in-house? And we had this idea of being like the one-stop shop for everything financial. We would come in, we do the consulting, the bookkeeping, and the tax filing is what we originally designed the company to be down the road. But at the current moment, we were just consultants.
Right.
So September came and you brought up the idea.
I remember just out of nowhere. I think I was just sitting because we were running the entire business out of my apartment at the time.
Yep.
And we worked a lot from my kitchen table. I remember in my bedroom because that's where we had
your monitors were set up and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, we had the monitors set up and everything like that. And then I remember like you would like lay on the bed with your laptop and like on your stomach with your feet up and like watching me work and stuff like that. It was hilarious. I turned around
trying to make sales calls and shit while I'm looking at you. And, like it's just so I can leverage your expertise because I don't know shit about bookkeeping at the time other than what it looks like.
Yeah. It was really fun. I don't even remember where necessarily the idea came from. It was just like one of those things that you just grab out of thin air. Like you don't really know where it comes from. It just hits you. And I remember telling you that I had never been more sure about something in my life. I was like, I just knew that I knew that it was what we were supposed to do. And that's just a gut instinct. There's no real metrics. There wasn't like a bunch of there wasn't a lot of conversation about it. There wasn't a lot of anything. It just really came down to is like I just knew that that's what we were going to be good at. And I don't know why. I don't really have a lot of good reasoning or thought process. It was just an idea. Yeah. And I remember bringing up the idea to you, and you were just like, no. Like, why would we ever do that? Like, we're not bookkeepers.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know. It just seems like what we should do. And so if you remember, we actually tried to merge with another bookkeeping company. We tried to find all these different bookkeepers and try to, connect with them and network with them and maybe create a referral partnership or stuff like that.
Yep.
But the good ones were busy or full. And then the ones that weren't full, we didn't really feel comfortable sending them work.
Correct.
And then so we're like, well, what if we just merge it? So we actually had approached a few different bookkeeping companies in town, told them what we wanted to do.
Yep.
And pretty much nobody really took us that seriously.
No, they all, I mean, to be fair, most of them I feel like kind of laughed at the idea and like, why would we merge with you guys?
Yeah.
We've built our own thing.
Yeah.
And basically they felt like we were going to come in there and take over, and we weren't. Our goal was just we were like, hey, you keep your existing book of business.
Dude, it was a very fair offer. The offer was, you keep your existing business, we'll take no revenue from your existing clientele.
Yep.
Zero.
Yep.
We will only share the new business and new clientele, and we're going to be the greatest lead source that you've ever had, and we're going to grow this thing into something massive.
Exactly.
And
we're client acquisition.
Yeah, exactly. And they were like, no, we're good. We have a strategy to hire at least 1 or 2 more bookkeepers this year. Okay, good job.
So maybe you should just give up.
Maybe you should just give up.
I do remember telling most of them, I was like, listen, we are going to do this regardless. Like, I want to let you know, like,
we are doing this. Yeah. This isn't an option for us. We are doing it. We would like to know if you'd like to do it with us.
Yeah. And it was made easier for us to delegate and leverage other people's expertise as opposed to having to create it from scratch.
Right.
Was the idea. And then again, the fact that people were just not necessarily laughing at us, but I think they're just kind of like, there's no way these guys are going to pull it off. Like, we're going to say no. We'll just like, why would we venture on this? Which makes it so much sweeter where we're at now.
It does. It's nice to be doubted.
Yeah.
I mean, like, speaking of which, like, if that bothers somebody, they shouldn't own a business.
Yeah.
Being doubted should be one of your favorite things ever.
Yep.
If you're gonna run a real successful business, being doubted is like, it's like the greatest fuel ever.
It is. Yeah, tell me I can't do it because I'm going to do it 20 times better than you think I could.
Yeah, exactly. Like, if you really want to get us going, tell us that we cannot do something.
Yep.
And we're like, I mean, all right, but game on.
Yeah. And there, to be fair, there are times where we have like done that, and then we're like, oh, that makes sense. That's why he said not to do it. Got it. Payroll would be number one. Yeah, there's plenty of times. But we the point is, what you're saying is like, you tell us not to do it. It makes us want to do it more. We are. I think entrepreneurs are always, find out the hard way later. You can take as many calculated risks as you want.
Totally.
But you don't know it works until you do it. But to your point, when you said earlier, you have to be so dedicated and almost obsessed with making it work that you will do anything and everything to try.
That's such a good word for it. Yeah. And I think especially in the first couple of years of us doing this, I think that's the right word. It's like it consumed every thought, every effort, all of our money. We had both cashed out retirement accounts. We were both like, we discussed a little bit earlier. Yeah. It's like we were all in, we use the phrase burn the ships, right? It's like, let's burn the ships. And so we did. We burned the ships like totally and completely. And I remember there was a conversation back in our old office. And I remember the conversation was something to the effect of, we were really struggling at that time before we'd come up with the bookkeeping idea. We didn't know what we were going to do. And we're like, how are we going to make this work? And we were both just like, well, let's just keep going till they take everything.
Yeah. I have nothing to lose. I mean, fuck, dude.
And people were like, well, that's such a crazy risk. I'm like, it wasn't a risk. We didn't have much.
Yeah.
Like, what are you going to repo a car that I owe money on? Like, thanks for taking my payment. Yeah. Like, I'd rather not make the payment, right? Like, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
Like at that time we were in an apartment. I didn't really own anything. Like, what are you going to, the risk to me seems so small. Yeah. The risk to other people seems so big because you're risking everything. I'm like, yeah, but it's like the equivalent of a few $1,000s. It's just not that big of a risk. If I lost it, it really wouldn't have impacted our lives that much if it didn't work out.
Correct.
We'd just gone and done something different.
Yep.
So I remember that conversation. I think that for me was really the turning point in the business. I knew that the business was going to work.
Yep.
Because we both had just sat there and without any questioning, without any debating, it was like, well, let's just keep going until they literally take everything.
Yeah, there is no real worst case scenario. It's like you file bankruptcy and you move on to the next thing. You start another business, you try something else that works.
It was just one of those moments of just, I think in life, you get few moments where you have real true courage.
Yeah.
And because I think there's very few moments where where life really requires courage.
Yes.
Think about your normal life. How often would you say, I needed courage to make that decision or do that thing?
You're right, yeah.
Very rarely.
Yeah.
We don't like fight lions off to get food, we're not living in caves, you know what I mean? Like we're not in fight or flight mode all the time.
Yeah.
Like to be quite frank, living in our area and our culture in the United States, like life's pretty fucking easy.
Yes.
Right? So we don't need a lot of courage to get through day to day. People are like, oh, I needed so much courage to talk to my friend about how they offended me.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, okay. I get it maybe, but like real courage to make real decisions that really impact your life forever. You get very few. And when you have them, you have to capitalize on it. You have to take that moment. You have to send that text. You have to make that decision. You have to purchase. You have to invest. You have to disinvest. Whatever it is that takes courage, when you have that energy, when you have that moment, when you have that grace for that thing, you gotta capitalize on it.
Yes, and say yes and figure it out later.
Yeah, totally. My sister said something wonderful to me one time. And I don't know where she got it, but I'll just give her credit for it. Maybe she got it somewhere else. I'm not sure. But she said the lifetime or the opportunity of a lifetime only has a lifetime of opportunity.
I like it.
They don't come around forever. They don't stick around. Like you don't get them forever. There are moments in time. There's moments in your life where if you go, yes, I make a decision, you stand firm on it, you burn the ships, you go all in.
Yep.
My experience has been that the people who are able to capitalize on that courage are able to get through this moment, like on the screen, and really thrive and flourish in their life and or their business.
Yeah, I agree. And that's, I think, again, going back to where the partnership aspect of it was from the Lapsus episode, you mentioned that, I was going to ride with you wherever we're going. So
yep.
The thing too that required courage on this as well is I want again to go back. We didn't know bookkeeping in the sense of like we never built a company like that before.
Yeah.
And we still took that leap. We were gonna figure it out later.
Yep.
And we just said yes and we'd figure it out.
We committed to it. I mean, I know we tried to, it sounds so fancy, but really it was kind of dumb.
Yeah.
It was kind of cavalier.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I just think that's sometimes how it works.
Yes. Yeah. So for all the people that said we shouldn't do it, you should not just give up in that aspect.
Thank you.
We said we say thank you to you.
Yeah, thank you.
Because that did push us to that next level of courage, and we took the jump. So I mean, it's that big saying where everyone says the moment is the scariest is when you want to jump, because then you just do it. It's just 1, 2, 3, go.
Yeah, it's that tipping point. Yep. It's that tipping point where there comes a moment where it's like it's good to go.
Yeah.
I remember once we were listening to, or I don't know if you were with me, but I was at some Tony Robbins thing. I can't remember what it was. Okay. I think I can't remember which one it was, but I think it was a live event. And he was talking about how he got to bring Gorbachev to the United States on his plane. And it was a really big deal. Okay. And he asked, one of the questions he asked about Gorbachev, he said, hey, tell me about the Cold War ending. You know, when did the Cold War end? And he kind of, you know, his spokesperson gave like a little answer. And, you know, Tony was not okay with that answer.
Yeah.
And so instead he goes, no, I want to know the moment. He goes, I want to know the moment in your heart where you knew it was over. What happened? What was that moment like?
Yeah.
And I love that question because that's different than like, okay, don't present to me what you've concluded and how you've rationalized the decision. I want to know in that split second and moment, at one point it was on and one point it was off. What shifted? What changed? And all of us have those tipping points where we make a decision and we go through it and we follow through with it.
Yep.
And so like a real point of encouragement for people of any walk of life is that when you have the courage to start a workout plan, to do a diet thing, to do something beneficial for yourself, to really start capturing your ideal future self and making large, dramatic changes that impact your life positively, when you have the energy and the effort to do that, like you fucking gotta go. Like it's go time, right?
Capitalize on that.
Yeah, because it's not gonna happen every day. It's just not realistic.
Yep. Like you said, trust your gut on that one. Because again, if you overthink it, you're never gonna do it.
Yeah.
And I think that was my mindset, because originally, like when I said no, I was thinking I'm not a bookkeeper. I don't know how to do that. I'm like, I need to just stop thinking about it and just trust him and just fucking do it. Yeah. And then again, we played into our strengths. It was sell.
Bingo.
Right. So
yeah, we did a little research too. So one of the things we did would before we added that service, because again, we don't ever make singular decisions about the business. We always make those together.
Yep.
And so whenever we make a big decision about the business, whether it's a service we're going to provide or not provide or anything we're going to do, we always make those decisions together. And so I'm not going to force us to do something if you're like, Nathan, I really don't think this is what we should be doing. Like we just don't do it, right?
Yeah.
And so we wait till we are in agreement on things that are this important. So what we decided to do to make sure that we could get on the same page was every real estate agent we met with like the next month, all we did was we asked them about their bookkeeper and like what their experience was like.
Yeah.
And the feedback was crazy, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, it was like, I haven't heard from them in 6 months.
I don't know what I'm paying for.
I don't know what I'm paying for. I have not seen a P&L in forever. I've never seen a P&L. I don't even have access to my books.
Yeah. That was one. And then they'd only talk to them like once a year because their CPA is doing it all, but their CPA is really just doing it for them.
Yeah, they'd ask them for a report, like their bookkeeper for a report, and they're like, then send me a bill. Like, yeah, if you want to see it, then
nickel and dime.
They're just buying time, like, because they haven't done anything all year.
Yeah,
you know, they're planning on just doing it at the end of the year. And so it just gets to one of those things where we just did some research, and so we would ask a question at the end of these conversations, and we would say, if we were to provide a bookkeeping service, would you be interested? Like, really, really simple stuff. Like, this isn't like a complicated like rocket science business plan. This isn't some Elon Musk SpaceX thing. This is literally like, hey. Tell me your experience. Okay, here's all the problems. Well, if we could create a system that solved those problems, would you pay us instead of them?
Yep.
And the results were crazy. People were like, yes, absolutely, please take it. You're already doing everything else. I trust you with everything else. Please. Like, literally, people were asking us to do it.
Yep.
And then we're like, I think over a couple weeks of that, we were kind of like, okay, we might be onto something. And then after a month, we're like, yeah, we need to do this.
Yes, I agree. Yeah,
that's when we reached out to the other companies, everything, and try to make this thing work. And like, we're getting stonewalled everywhere. And Mike and I are like, how are we going to do this?
Yeah.
We can't do the actual work and do everything else that we're doing.
Correct. Which is, again, I think why we'll get into that later, which is why most bookkeepers, again, they're not business owners, they're bookkeepers.
Right.
And which is why they have a certain capacity to do so many things. And then maybe why we got turned down so many times where they were the one track mind and they weren't thinking broader, right? They weren't thinking, okay, I'm going to leverage these guys. These guys aren't trying to take me over. They're just trying to feed me business because they're good at sales.
We just wanted we wanted our fair share for it.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so after that, though, we were kind of getting stonewalled everywhere. Nothing was going through. We had talked to several different bookkeepers and bookkeeping companies, and nothing was really catching on.
Correct.
And so my sister had kept telling us about a family friend that I'd known forever, a family friend who had, done really, really high end like cost accounting, and he was more of a controller level type of a person, but created all the systems and processes for huge companies, some of them in the billions of dollars, right?
Yeah.
Like global companies. And he's the one running a team of cost accountants. And my sister's like, you should talk to him about helping you with your business. And I'm like, no.
Yeah. That guy's going to laugh at us.
He's going to laugh at us. Like, there's just no way. Like, I can't even pay the dude.
Yeah.
Like, there's just like, or not really, so it's just one of those weird things. And so, but ultimately we were coming up against the deadline that we're like, we've got to get this figured out. Like, it was the end of November coming into December. So I remember calling him and saying, hey, here's what I got going on. Are you interested? He's like, yeah, I'd like to know. So like, hear more. So we got together. I showed him our business plan and showed him what the metrics were.
Yeah.
And he was pretty blown away by like what we thought we could do within the business. And he was like, yeah, this is something that I'd really like to be a part of. And I think you and I were both like, huh?
Yeah.
Like, we were kind of in disbelief. Like, are you serious? Like, why?
I remember you telling me that after we interviewed, he's like, yeah, I'd be interested. And then we both got off the phone or the Zoom call or whatever. Like, holy shit.
Like, are you sure? Are you sure?
This guy's I think he's saying yes. Yeah. But again, to let people know too, like this was in September. We had the idea, and Nathan and I were probably about 2 to 3 months out before we were, piss broke.
Totally.
Like completely.
Dude, I remember the actual numbers because that's the way my brain works, right?
Yeah.
So I remember in December, we were down to just under $4,000. Like $3,900 was left in our business account. That was the total amount of money that we had left. And we agreed to hire the guy for $4,000 a month.
Yep. Yeah, that was all we had. But we're not going to go again.
So we're going to spend all of our money on 1 month. And I was, just so you guys know, I was very honest with this guy.
Yeah.
Like, very honest. And he knew exactly where we were. He's like, hey, let's just give it a shot. Let's see what happens. And then the first month, we brought in $6,000 of bookkeeping.
Yep.
Which we thought was crazy because we didn't have a contract.
Yeah.
We didn't even really know how to like get access. We didn't know how to price anything.
Yeah.
We were just guessing.
We're shooting in the dark.
We
with
were
our prices
guessing
and everything.
on everything and the services we provided. And man, he was so gracious and generous and like gave us so much of his expertise and so much of his time.
Yeah.
And really, honestly, I don't know if it wasn't for him, I'm not sure that we would have done it.
Probably not. No, because when we first put out the idea of doing the bookkeeping in September, I remember putting our post online for Indeed, and we got flooded with because this is during COVID again. Yeah. Remember, everyone's looking for a remote position, so we got flooded with hundreds.
I think it was like over 400 applicants the first weekend we posted the job.
Yeah, bookkeepers, and then
we're like, how do we interview a bookkeeper?
Every single one of them look exactly like what we need. And I have no idea how to differentiate the difference between a good one, a semi-good one, and a bad one. Because all the resumes obviously are putting their best foot forward. And again, I'm someone who failed accounting in freaking college. So how the hell am I supposed to...
You changed your major because you could have finished accounting.
Yeah. Not a good test taker. Going back, class. Not a good test taker. I'm not great at any of them, like the math aspect of things that is past... adding and subtracting, dividing and multiplying.
You're like, I had 3 chicken nuggets, and now I have 2 chicken nuggets.
Exactly, and they're all gone. So that's about the extent I have on it. So it was just so overwhelming to see that level of those level of people wanting to work with us, and little did they know we're again 2 to 3 months away from being able to freaking afford anything. Right?
Exactly.
So it was pretty cool that this guy came along and was willing to take a chance on us.
He was so gracious, man.
So we gave him our last job, which is again the idea of having the courage to actually freaking do something. It was another one of those like, should we hire him or not? Let's not overthink it. We have an opportunity. Fucking take it.
Let's go.
Yep.
Like this is our one way out. Like we've exhausted every other opportunity. This is our one way out. And I think that's also what made the decision so easy.
Yeah.
Because there wasn't any other decision to be made. The only other decision was to not do it. And I just remember feeling so strongly that it was almost like I this is kind of like a really crass analogy.
Yeah.
But I almost felt like pregnant with this idea. Like I had to let it out. Like it was like getting uncomfortable. We had to get this thing going.
Yep.
It was that much of a drive. It felt very natural. It felt very organic. It felt very strong.
Yeah.
That this was something that we needed to do. And maybe even if you like throw a spiritual context to it, like maybe God was telling us that this is what we're supposed to do.
Yeah.
And so I just felt that when you make a decision like that and the options get less and less and less, the decisions actually get easier and easier and easier. Yeah. One of the greatest things that we struggle with is if you have too many options, it gets really difficult to make a decision.
Yep.
But when you're forced in a corner, which I'm just thinking about this now. But it's really odd how we keep trying to keep ourselves out of these pressure situations. And sometimes they're the easiest situations to be in. Because when you're pushed into a corner, like it's just do or don't.
Yep.
Like it's simple on off, turn the light on or don't. Like there's not a lot of thinking. There's not a dimmer switch. It's like, do you want it or not?
Yep.
And like you just have to make a decision. And sometimes we try to run from these and insulate ourselves from these pressure situations. But I think you and I would attest that some of the best things that ever happened was when we forced ourselves in those situations to grow, change, and make decisions. Everything good came from that.
I agree. It's when you're backed in the corner with the guns to your head, that is when I think we thrive the most.
Yeah.
And most people would fold, right? Because they're just like, I don't know, should I do it? And then I think that the hardest thing I think most people have a concept of is, we keep saying this for us, it's like, what do we have to lose? We had nothing to lose. And I think a lot of other people have a lot to lose, or they feel like they have a lot to lose, right? They have their family on the line, they have the house on the line, they have the place. And that right there is a difference. Again, to go back to my self-proclaimed stat of 1%, right? That separates the 1% to the 99%. Totally is the fact it's like, you are worried about, like, it's one thing when I ask people, like, they're trying to find funding for it. And I'm like, well, or for their business to start it up. And they're looking for, should I do this? Should I not? How do I do it? I'm like, well, take out a loan, instead of using your cash flow, take out a loan to bet on yourself to grow this business. And the first thing they say is, well, now I have debt. Now, what if I can't pay it back? Right there is when I'm like, okay, that's the problem. What
you should just give up.
Yeah, exactly. Just give up.
Just give up.
What if I can't pay it back? That means you're not obsessed, confident, or enough to go forward with that thing. You have to bet on yourself and be all in. So the gun to your head is, you create the gun to your head in that instance.
Totally. So you put a demand on your skill set.
Exactly.
Because there is a difference between, you could take a good debt and bad debt, right?
Correct.
But good debt typically is something that you can create wealth with.
Yep.
And if you do, like you said, really believe in yourself, the concern isn't, oh, well, how am I going to make the payment?
Yeah.
The concern is, how do I get what I want without this? If there's a way that I can get it without it, I'll do it. But if I can't, then just do it.
Yeah. That's the jump. That's the courage part. Because again, you're right. If you look at the grand scheme of things, yes, you could have this debt that could cripple you and you're out and blah, blah, blah. But if you don't believe in yourself enough, again, just give up and don't do it, because you're going to be going against everyone else out there who's going to be telling you not to do it, or they're going to
be your family, your friends, everybody who's like, God, are you sure? Like,
exactly. You're crazy for doing this.
I remember had somebody tell me one time, when are you going to get a real job?
Yeah. So I
was like, never.
We can't. We're unemployable now. By the way, that's another thing I want everyone to know. If you decide to take the leap into entrepreneurship, you will never almost be employable again once it succeeds. Once you get a taste of what it's like to succeed in entrepreneurship, unemployable the rest of your life.
I'd agree. I would take a really unique situation for me to work for somebody else again.
Correct. I mean, I could do the sales aspect of it, because the best thing about sales I've realized, like, throughout time is
you're bigger than the boss.
Yeah, you can do whatever the fuck you want to do.
Yeah. Listen, you're like, hey, pal. Like, I mean, your business succeeds because I'm selling the business.
Yeah, I remember
it's a lot of leverage.
I remember going to
a lot of leverage.
Our old firms, like one of their big Christmas parties, and this guy, everyone's in suits and shit, and this guy shows up late, and he shows up and he's like, he's not in a suit or anything, jeans and a t-shirt, and I look at you, I'm like, why the hell? Like, I have to dress up for this shit, but why can't he? He's like, yeah, well, he's also the top producer of the company.
He also
created
25% of the company's revenue. So
he can do whatever he wants.
He can do literally whatever he wants. Nobody's gonna say anything.
Exactly. So entrepreneurship does create, once you make it, it does create you to be unemployable most often.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah. I think one of the things that's very challenging to think through is, how do you keep making the business current based off what the current market is? Like, how do we keep adapting the business? There's been multiple different iterations of the business. The business is really completely different than what we started out at just 4.5 years ago, 5 years ago now, or almost up to 5 years. It's completely different. It was really designed to be just a marketing arm to basically really help us get in touch with more business owners and to do transact on more insurance products. And now it's transitioned into a full-blown accounting firm. We do a lot of tax strategies and planning and things like that. I cannot. If you had told me 4.5 years ago that this is what it would be, I would definitely have not believed you.
I low-key want to go find my accounting teacher. I had thought about that.
Do you remember their name?
No, I remember it's a her. She's in. I'm going to go back to WSU and see if I can find her, because
somebody help us find this teacher.
Yes, because I would love to go in there and be like, I just want to let you know. Remember that one time when it was like you told me I should probably just drop it, and then there's no way. It's just
you're like, you were right.
You were right. I should just drop it. I should have owned the company instead.
I should have owned the company instead.
And guess
you're
what?
right.
Yeah. God, I should go back. It wasn't. She wasn't harsh on me for it. She was just like, she was trying to help me out.
But it was the reality of the situation.
Yeah.
There's okay, listen. There's a difference between somebody like mocking you and being like, hey.
The writing's on the wall.
Maybe this isn't the right choice for you.
Yeah.
And I think in our modern society, when people do that, they think that everybody's just trying to hold them back or be rude or offensive. And sometimes it's like, I mean, sometimes honesty hurts.
Yeah.
That's just how it goes.
Yeah. So yeah, no malice towards her, no hate or any of that stuff. She did great, and she knows. I mean, I just wasn't a good test taker. I wasn't.
You weren't a good what?
Test taker.
He said a good tit test taker.
I was gonna say teacher. But I wasn't.
That was a good tit.
I'm not a good English person either. English. Oh man, yeah, but yeah, the tides turned definitely. We went from the consulting firm to going through COVID to pivoting to being the all inclusive financial firm by starting with bookkeeping. We went from bookkeeping and just got that up and running, and just hopes and prayers, finding that one guy to really help us get things.
And then 6 weeks later, finding who's now our head accountant.
Correct. Yeah.
And that was just game changer.
That was huge.
She's incredible. Just 6 weeks in, we had to get somebody else.
Yeah, and I think that's what also with the shift from being self-employed salespeople to business owners really took place, because now, like you mentioned last episode, we're now managing other people other than just ourselves.
Right.
And that was where I think you and I started on. We split up our responsibilities and the roles, because you could focus more on the business and the management side.
Right.
But not, and I could focus more on the sales and bringing in clients, because if it was just one of us, you would have to do both. And seeing sales is a new journey for both of us. It was not. How do you do it?
I honestly I think about people who are starting businesses on their own and have to do everything on their own, and I don't know how they do it.
No,
I really don't,
because you always got to have money coming in.
I really respect anybody who's going to try.
Yeah,
because it's just not simple to do everything. You can't be good at everything.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't. You just got to double down on your strengths, but at the beginning you have to do it all.
Yeah, no matter what.
And then the first thing you do is you find somebody who can do the stuff you hate doing, and you actually put it very well. I mean, we can talk about that in our time too, but how to lay out your job description, your duties that you're doing in the business. Yep. What do you like to do? Stick to that and delegate out. Yeah,
I mean, basically the idea there is when I talk to business owners about how they want to transition out of the business and create their business to become a sellable business.
Yeah.
What I tell them to do is I would say, okay, what I want you to do is I want you to write on a piece of paper your top 12 responsibilities. All 12. Yep. It could be as simple as whatever it is. It could be huge. It could be simple. It could be easy. But from your perspective, what are the top 12 things that you do? And I have them rank the top 12 in a matter of importance. And then I also have them rank the top 12 in a matter of how much time they spend doing it. So what I want them to focus on the things that require the least amount of time that are the most important. That's what I want them to continue to do. So the things that require the most amount of time and are the least important, we start delegating those off.
Yep.
And so the idea here is that every single month we work on getting one item delegated, and throughout an entire year, you can get yourself to now you have a sellable business because you are no longer needed in the business. Now, to get that done in a year is nearly impossible without funding or without having a bunch of money. So the reality is that might take more over like 2 years to get that done.
Yeah.
But if somebody could just structurally think to themselves, what are my top 12 responsibilities? How important are they? And how much time do they take me? They could focus on the things that get them the greatest reward, which is the least amount of time for the most important.
Agreed. And we're working towards that ourselves too. It's not like we're 5 years in and we're still trying to get to that point where
we've gotten some stuff off, and then things have happened. We had to take stuff back on.
Yeah.
We've hired people, maybe they didn't work out, and we had to take things back on. Like that's just the way things go sometimes, right?
Yep.
You could be the worst boss in the world or the best boss in the world.
Yeah.
You're the same, but people feel differently about you. That's how just things go.
Yeah.
And so it just becomes one of those things that you could structurally remove yourself. And the challenging part for most people who run businesses is once they delegate something, they usually put something in its place.
Yeah.
Because I think there's this feeling of like, I have to be doing something.
Yeah.
I have to be. And there comes a point where if you want to be the business owner and not the business operator, that can no longer be true.
Yeah, I agree.
I remember us having a conversation once, probably about a year into the bookkeeping, because things were going pretty well.
Yeah.
We had multiple bookkeepers at that time. We had really transitioned into really more. I was operating the business. You were selling the business. I was, running the business, right? Yeah. So, and that was the thing that's always worked really well for us. And I remember being so frustrated one day because I'm like, who are all these clients?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know who they are. I don't know anything about them. Like there was a long time where I knew every single client. I reviewed every balance sheet. I reviewed every P&L. Like I knew everything about every client. I knew the struggles that they had. I knew what their goals. I knew everything. We talked about every single client.
Yep.
And there came a point where it's like, I can't keep track of all these people. Like I don't know what to do. And there came a point where I had to really accept and give up the idea that I was going to know about everything that was going to happen in the company.
Correct. I do remember that.
I hated it.
Yeah, because you like sales as well too. I mean,
I miss doing sales, man. I love doing sales.
Yeah.
Like I still love doing presentations and I like doing things like that, but I miss that like I don't know, there's a certain energy and a certain rush and an adrenaline you get when like you make a sale. And I don't know why it just never goes away. I always like the wheel and deal. I always like the negotiating. I always like get the people to participate in our company. And especially because I think we do a really fucking good job. Absolutely. But I really missed that, man. Like, and that was something that I had to give up in order for our company to grow. I had to give up something that was taking up a lot of my time, but ultimately wasn't the most important thing for me to be doing.
Yeah, no, we needed you in the other spot. Yeah. It's just like
I just didn't like it.
Yeah, I mean, it's like that in any sports analogy too. I mean, you might be. I remember I thought I was like the best linebacker of all time, but the guy's like, "Oh no, we need you at center." I'm like, that's opposite. That's offense, not defense. And you're making me do a lineman job. And like yeah, but we need you in this position. And you just have to accept that, okay, well, I need to do what I need to do for my team to win.
And perform.
And that was the role you took was you need to do what you need to do in order to make your team to win, and then your team is us. So we went from the bookkeeping aspect, from the consulting to the bookkeeping, and then to keep along the origin story to go on you should just give up. Because there was a time where I think we didn't give up, but we just had to accept the writing was on the wall, which is the payroll side. I think people need to know that part too. Oh. So, because our very first challenge was, again, number one, we got laughed at for starting bookkeeping because we're like, you guys aren't bookkeepers, you're not CPAs. Yeah. Why the hell are you doing this?
They took one look at you and they're like, no thanks.
That is my favorite. That is my favorite. Like, you want a bookkeeping firm? Like, listen, I'm not doing the work.
So I'm going to hire you to be my accountant. You're like, no, let me be very clear.
Yeah, there's some stories.
You do not want me to be doing your accounting.
Oh yeah, no. I'll side story that real quick. So there was one time it was a couple years into the business, and we were at this really high end restaurant, and I was walking by. It was a friend's birthday there, so I was getting us a couple shots, and they came in these nice little flute glasses and stuff. And I bring these 2 shots of tequila. It was already a great night, so I was feeling pretty good. And I'm walking by, and I see one of our clients sitting there with a friend of hers, and she goes, "Oh, Mike, come here." And I'm like, "Oh, hey, oh shit, hey, how you doing?"
Yeah.
Gave her a hug, everything. And she was like, "Yeah, I'm doing great. I want to introduce you to my friend. She's a realtor as well." And then I was like, "Oh, hey, it's nice to meet you." And she goes, "Yes, friend, this is Mike, and yeah, he's my bookkeeper." And I'm eyes glazed, holding 2 flute shots of tequila. Luckily I was dressed fairly decently, but this lady looks at me like, oh, yeah, I was like, kind of, I was like, doesn't believe it. Like that's
immediately
awkwardly
questioning her friend's judgment.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, what are you talking about? And then I could see like she was not hiding her look at all. It was like, I think she tried to, but again, you're looking at that clashed so hard.
Yeah.
And I told her immediately, it's like, oh no, I own the company with my business partner. I don't do the books. We have our bookkeepers. Anyway, great to meet you. Walk away. But it's so funny to see people's reaction when I tell them like, I'm an accounting firm or whatever. They're just like, there's no way this kid does it. Because a lot of my friends from high school too also remember me from just being the party kid and all that kind of stuff. So it's just
you were a party kid.
I know, it's hard to believe.
So strange. You really don't give off that vibe.
I know. I really do seem like the accountant. You're like, wow, that guy probably sits at a desk all day. So
that guy does not talk much. Guaranteed.
But yeah, so I remember just doing the bookkeeping aspect of things, and then we're again, they told us not to do it. We did it. And then we were like, okay, we want to be the one-stop shop. So we do bookkeeping, payroll, CPA, and consulting. All that would fit together.
Yeah.
And we went around asking people how they did their payroll. And we talked to probably 4, 5, 6 different CPA firms and bookkeeping firms. And we said, how do you do payroll? And they all said, don't do it.
Don't do it.
Don't do it. We don't do it. And I'm like, well, why not? And they said, it's just a lot of work, blah, blah, blah. But as we mentioned earlier, the moment he says we shouldn't do something, we're going to find a way to do it.
Yeah. And we're just dumb.
Yeah. So.
Sometimes, there's a pro and a con to our personality and demeanor.
Yes.
Right. The pro is that we can figure things out and we have a grittiness that gets us through a lot of difficulty.
Correct.
The con is we're not good at learning lessons on other people's dime.
Correct. Because we think we can do it better.
Yeah, we tend to learn the hard way as a general rule.
When people tell me they didn't do it, I'm like, that's because you gave up. So, and that's just my mentality.
And then
I know
we're like, we gave up too.
Now we get it. And I'm like, I understand. You didn't give it up. It's a pain in the ass. So,
I just remember we did it for a year. We hired somebody specifically to do it who had a large history in payroll.
Yeah.
But one thing that we didn't account for, that if it had just been payroll that had already been set up, things would have been fine. But the problem with our vision was that to be a nationally recognized company, that meant we were working with agents and clients in multiple different states.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of these clients didn't have payroll set up at all. So that means you've got to learn how to set up payroll in all 50 states.
Fuck. Yeah.
And keep track of it all. So we have this huge spreadsheet, still have it today, that shows all, at least back in the day, I'm sure it's different now, but every single state had a tab on Excel, and every single one we had instructions on exactly what to do and how to do it.
And then we hit
that cost us so much money to learn that.
Yeah.
And then we just had to bail because I don't think we made a single dollar on payroll for at least the first year. There's no way we made any money.
Absolutely. And it makes a lot of sense now why they all told us not to. It's just because we're liable for all that stuff as well. And it was just something
caused us a lot of heartache.
Yeah. It was just, and it wasn't what we're good at. I mean, that we were known for tax strategies and bookkeeping paired to tax strategies. Payroll did not pair with tax strategies because of the sense that it's more of a system that's just making sure it's done correctly. Compliance. It's a compliance thing.
Right.
So there's no real strategy in payroll other than just like what you would set it to, or like how you hire a 1099 or a W-2. But I think after doing it for a year and we looked back and we did our own business planning, we saw that we made no money on that.
Yeah.
We weren't the best at it, and we pride ourselves in being the best at what we do.
Right.
And we just had to humble ourselves, put the ego aside, and then
just accept it. Yeah.
Accept that we were not good at that. So instead of giving up, we decided to just move on.
Yeah.
into different things.
Yeah, but I think the thing is that there are some people who wait 10 years to find the one thing that they're good at. And then there are other people who try 10 things to find the one thing that they're good at.
That's a good reel right there.
And you and I are people who are we're going to try. Yep. I think the benefit to being a person who's willing to try 10 things and fail 9 times is in every single one of those failures, you learn something new.
Correct.
In every single one of those failures, you learn how to capitalize on you hear different conversations, you hear different talking points, you learn something different, you have to investigate something. The wealth of knowledge we learned through failure is significantly better than I think the wealth of knowledge we could learn through waiting.
Yeah, absolutely. Trial and error. Yeah. I mean, even going back to that again, because our topic today is you should never or just give up, was, again, when I got into the financial representative game with you, again, I had no background on anything financial. Yeah. I knew a 401k that I got forced into happily. now that I look back on it, by my old boss, and I knew that was about the extent of it, right? So I remember going into like networking events, and I didn't understand, how do I differentiate myself from all these other financial advisors, again, who I would assume were way smarter than I was.
Knew everything about everything.
Yeah, they graduate with a finance degree, and they're like, these older guys, and they're just like, I know everything. So I'm like, okay, how do I just get people to talk to me? Yeah. In the end of the day, no matter what industry you're in, it's client acquisition. You could be the smartest person in the room, but if you can't get a client through the door, no one cares.
It doesn't matter. You have the greatest software ever, but if nobody knows about it,
doesn't matter.
It makes no difference.
I was like, all right, how do I get in front of people? So I think we had like a spreadsheet of like 10 or 15 different ways I could introduce myself. Remember that?
Oh man, that's right. I forgot about that. Like all the different ways we would like try to talk about what we did.
Yes. So I was like, I focus on, instead of just saying like, I focus on life insurance and high-end tax strategies for business owners. I was like, okay, well, I'm a financial representative. I didn't want people to say that because most often people who hear that you're a financial advisor or representative or some sort of industry like that typically don't want to talk to you.
No, I remember going to a couple of networking events and trying a bunch of different stuff. And I remember one that I tried that worked really well was I stood up, and I think it was like Valentine's Day or something. So I brought like a couple of bags of like Valentine's Day candy, like some chocolate and some suckers. And I give you 30 seconds to talk about whatever, explain who you are and what you're going to do. So I get on this microphone in probably in front of 80 people at this networking event, and I say, hey, none of you are going to remember who I am. So that's fine with me. All you need to know is that I have candy. And if you come and introduce yourself to me, I will give you some candy. I've never gotten more business cards ever at a networking event than that one thing. That was it. It was hilarious. And then you only got in touch with people who like wanted to come and meet you and like talk to you. Like they're like, okay, I'm curious, which are my people, right? Yeah. So I like curious people. And so it was just one of those things. It's like, hey, listen, like if we're gonna do this, like I'm gonna give you some candy, you're gonna give me a card. Fair trade.
Yeah, and candy's a lot better than what I was on, because I remember I did mine and I just switched to beer. I'm like, and I would always pretend that like I just randomly walked into this, like, hey, I'm just here. I saw it was a cool event, wanted to pop by. So if you want to come talk to me, I work, in the financial representative. I'll buy a beer and let's chat. And then I had a beer in my hand, cheers, and went off.
I think the worst one I did, let's go that route.
Yeah.
The worst one I did was I went to an event and I remember I used the line, I just sell a lot of life insurance. So if you want an actual life insurance solution, I'm your guy. Like that was about it, right?
I was like, fuck
just trying. So the guy two from me who had to go twice after me, the first thing he said was, well, I'm glad I didn't have to go after that annoying guy.
Jeez, I would have punched him in the face.
I was like, fair enough. That was kind of annoying, but like we were just willing to take the risks.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, let's just see what happens. Like my thought was, well, if somebody needs life insurance, they know who to talk to.
Correct. You're trying to be very specific.
Yeah, I was just trying to get really specific, and I probably didn't do it the right way by any stretch of the imagination. But you have to just try things. And so, like, we'd have all these different things about how do we explain what we do and what do we do. And now we teach that to, like, real estate agents.
Yeah, how to separate yourself differently.
Yeah, because every real estate agent in the world, how do they just, when you say, oh, what do you do? What do they all say?
Buy, sell, and invest.
I help people with the biggest financial decision of their life.
Yeah.
Really? Death? Interesting.
Yeah. It's the same thing you see it. Buy, sell, invest. It's everywhere.
Wow, dude.
But
or they're like, I'm in real estate, or I'm a realtor. And you're like, oh, dude, it's so bad. So like, think about this. Like we talk about this a lot in our conversations in classes that we do for brokerages. One of the things I love asking real estate agents is, what percentage of your job do you think the average consumer understands?
Yeah.
And we get lots of different answers, but predominantly we're getting answers like, 5% to 25%.
Yeah.
The average consumer probably understands 5 to 25% of what a real estate agent does.
Correct.
Okay, fair enough. So one of the things I ask real estate agents is, if the general public only understands 5 to 25% of what you do, why would you ever describe yourself as a real estate agent when you know that immediately you're going to be eliminating 75% of your value to that person?
Agreed.
It just makes no sense. It's like, why do you keep talking like that? Like if you want to get into a new echelon of business, you have to find a different way to communicate your value. Because what happens is people ask you what you do, and we respond with a title. And a title isn't descriptive of what you actually accomplish for somebody.
Agreed.
That's not what it is. And so we try to get more past that. And we did that as well. And we still do it today. Like we still are constantly working on how do we even talk about what we do and who we are, because the business keeps changing too.
Correct.
And so our role in the business keeps changing. And so, what we say and what we do, we've gone through many different variations of it.
I agree. And that's exactly why we tried all those different pitches at those events, is because, again, I'm just going to say the word and just soak it in. Financial advisor. The 2 words. Oof. Financial advisor. And everyone will assume what they do in their own head, their own experience with their financial advisors, people they've met. They just already are going to be like, for me, I remember when I heard financial advisor, I'm like, so you're going to take my money, you're going to invest it, and you're going to live on your yacht.
Yeah.
Got it.
There's like a huge pendulum. There's between they're the most important, greatest person I've ever met, or they're the scum of the fucking earth. Yeah. And there's like everything in between. Wolf of Wall Street, financial advisor, like that. Yeah, that's totally. Immediately what most people assume, right? And everything in between. So that's why we're trying to come up with all these different ways to be able to say what we did. I remember like my worst one at the networking event was, I was like, my name is Mike Ross, and I act as a modern day Robin Hood, where I take money from the IRS and I give it back to the people. Yep, that was a good one. I'm a modern day Robin Hood. That's right. I'm like, so you're stealing from people? Yeah, but like, it sounds like you steal and that kind of stuff. I'm like, okay, whatever. I tried it. Hey, fuck. Better than saying, hi, I'm a financial advisor or a financial representative. I'll help you sell life insurance. Better than saying, hey, I sell a lot of life insurance. Yeah, exactly. So but again, we just kept freaking trying and trying and trying. So it's like, should you give up? No, you just adapt and figure out how to make it work. So we were doing that our whole time. Again, we're not just a bookkeeping firm. We started out as a financial consulting firm, and our tagline is Northwest Premier Creative Financial Solutions, because that's damn well what we do. Right. We find creative financial solutions for people to free up money, to be able to use that money for building wealth and however they need to do it. Right. So that was our tagline. And then we went into bookkeeping, and then we added the payroll, and then the payroll didn't work out. So we're trying to figure out, okay, we're not just a bookkeeping firm. We still do creative financial solutions. Right. But now we do bookkeeping, and we had to figure out, okay, who's our target market for just bookkeeping? Because we were trying to we can't just go after everyone. Not a chance. Yeah. Dude, business has done a lot of different things in the last few years. Yeah. It's been crazy. What would you say is one thing, like if there's a person out there that's listening who's starting a business, maybe they're like a year in, and they're frustrated, like, and they're sitting down with you at the beer, how do you encourage them? What do you say to them?
Ooh, I think that's just one of my favorite things ever is hanging out with people and then hearing where they're at. I think, like you mentioned this a long time ago, people who have made it or gone through the journey actually like talking about themselves quite often.
Yeah.
Right. Which is how like I learned
we're doing a podcast
exactly.
for hours on end. People are like, are these guys talking about themselves again?
Yeah. And I'm like, shit, give some feedback. But I mean, to be fair, you did tell me, you're like, don't try and sell, just ask questions. People who have money and people who own businesses love to talk about themselves.
Yeah.
So I remember as a financial representative, I would just ask questions to get them to talk about themselves and then find a problem.
Yeah.
So you're right. That's why we started the podcast. Now we're like, we like to talk about ourselves. So
we are enamored with ourselves.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, geez. Like, I didn't realize how those two clashed. I know how the past and present has come together. Jesus. Well, that was my own discovery right there.
Yeah, here's what I think, though. I feel like people... Well, I want to go back to the actual question.
Yeah,
I want to give the actual answer to this question because you and I can go on tangents, as people have clearly can tell by this podcast.
So what was the point again?
But the question I want to know is, somebody's sitting across from you. They've been in business for a year.
Yeah.
They're really like in the throes of it. They're having to make difficult decisions. They're struggling. They've got, you could put whatever other scenario you want into it. But my question would be, they're sitting across from you drinking a beer.
Yeah.
What do you say to them? How do you encourage them?
Yeah. So number one, you go back to the why. Like, why the hell did you even start the business?
Yeah.
Remind them, like, you're doing this for who? Are you doing this for what? What's your vision? Right? So then you refuel the fire. And then they're like, okay, I remember I want to do this, but it's not working. And then the next question I usually ask is, okay, like, who's your target market? Like, who are you going after? Like, you are the best in your industry, right? So who are you going to go after? And most of them don't know. They say, again, like, I actually, to be fair, I just met a guy who's in insurance, home, auto, and life, I guess, but mainly home and auto insurance, right? And I just talked to him at the gym, and he asked me that question. He was like, I don't know. I'm just getting into it. It's been a year now. Like, I just don't know. How did you grow your business? And I said, you found a niche.
Yeah.
And I was like, so you go after, I'm guessing, like everyone, like you do home and auto, like you just mentioned, right? He's like, yeah. Like, for who? And he goes,
yeah.
I was like, everyone. I'm like, guess who else says that? Every other fucking insurance agency ever. Yeah, they go after. I go, anybody needs to buy. All my clients are people who breathe because everyone, or who drives, kind of things. And I'm like, so be specific on who your target market is and be the absolute fucking best in that industry.
I work with people who own classic cars.
Yeah.
Or like I work with people who own more than 4 vehicles.
Yep.
Or I work with people who have heavy machinery. Yep. Or whatever it is. Like, it sounds like it's actually limiting your ability to transact, but being specific and getting really good at one thing will radically open up doors for you that being general will never do.
Exactly. So, and I even asked the guy the question. I was like, all right, can you name me a real estate agent right now? And they're like, and you start thinking about it. I'm like, okay, so that's my point. You're overwhelmed because you probably know a lot.
Yeah.
And or you just not really you just don't know who to mention first or whatever, or why I'm even asking. But if I say, hey, I'm looking for real estate brokerages, I need the team lead, somebody who has more than 5 people on their team in the Vancouver area, preferably at Keller Williams.
Yeah, and then you can think of people right away.
Then they're like, oh, I know. They immediately think of somebody at Keller Williams. They immediately think of somebody who owns a team. They immediately think of the top dog, probably, who has people underneath them. And that gets way more specific than the person who just says, I'm looking for realtors.
Such good advice.
I have it every once in a while, I know.
I've taught you some good things, Mike.
All from you, yeah, all from you.
It's all from you.
It is just really funny. I think that's my favorite thing that we've come to realization on the podcast. We always said people love talking about themselves, to get them talking about themselves, and we fucking are talking about ourselves right now.
Yeah. Sure. I think the goal is for it to be helpful.
Yeah.
The goal is for it to be helpful, and we'll hear other people's stories as well. But I don't know. I just think that these conversations are valuable. I don't think a lot of people just openly get into these conversations. And so I think to be able to engage with the reality of what actually takes place to get a business to where you want it to go is a really beneficial thing for everybody.
Agreed.
This is awesome. Okay, Mike. We want to talk about our book?
I mean, we probably should sell something here in these podcasts. Otherwise, we're just doing it to talk and have people listen to us, yeah?
Mike, why should somebody read The Financial Blueprint for Real Estate Agents?
I believe somebody should read The Financial Blueprint for Real Estate Agents, Nathan. Because number one, this is not just for real estate agents, for people who want to understand entrepreneurship in general. Again,
good point.
Our niche is for real estate agents. Real estate agents are independent contractors. They're entrepreneurs. So a lot of the stuff in here, minus a few chapters, can be geared towards anyone starting a business. So again, we've proven ourselves what we just said. We found a niche, which is real estate agents, which is right here. Mm-hmm. But underneath it, there's everything you need in order to be successful between LLC startups, S corporations, OPM plan, which is other people's money, how to leverage other people's money to build wealth, how to keep more of your money when you start making that money, how to sell. Everything in here is a roadmap that you can take and get your business up and running on the right foot. Because too often do we have people come to us and say, I'm in industry for the last 10 years and they haven't done anything.
Totally.
And they've been losing money to the IRS left and right because they number one, didn't know, and number two, no one told them.
Totally. I remember a long time ago when we had somebody in our office and they were telling us about their cheap CPA and how proud and grateful they were for their cheap CPA because it was like their buddy from college who does their taxes really cheaply, who's never given them an ounce of advice.
Yeah.
Who's never given them an ounce of help other than to file what the information was that they gave them.
Correct.
And I remember doing a simple calculation, which was basically if just during their real estate career, if they had met us the first year instead of that other CPA the first year, conservatively, I estimated that they overpaid their taxes by $1 million.
Yeah. Yeah. That's pretty bad.
On average, it was like 50 grand a year for 20 years.
Yeah.
And so it's like the opportunity cost of that is tremendous. So to be able to get your hands on a book like that literally just takes you step by step, shows you exactly what to do, how to do it, where to go, all the things that are in there. If people just fucking read it and just did what it tells you to do at the end of every chapter, their financial lives would be significantly better.
Exactly. Which ultimately the book will fulfill our mission, which is to be the financial advocates for real estate agents and independent contractors all across the country.
Yep.
Again, we can only hold so much in our cup, but we want to make sure that everyone at least understands and gets on the right foot and can be chasing that American dream.
Very good. Well, Mike, it's been good, buddy.
It's been good. I'll see you in a second.
Yeah, I know. Now they know
the other side.